Hello everyone, Saber Alter of G&A Reviews here with a servant spotlight for yet another Arturia, Arturia Lancer Alter. We'll be examining her stats and her skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. I also have a spotlight up for the other new story lock servant, Nikola Tesla. It's linked in the description, so do check that out right after this video. But for now, let's move on to Lancer Alter's stats. Lancer Alter has a max HP of 11,761, which is very low among 4-star Lancers, but because Lancers have naturally high HP, her HP is considerably above average when compared to all other 4-stars. Lancer Alter's attack of 9,968, on the other hand, is the highest among all 4-star Lancers and among the highest in general among all 4-stars. Taking a look at her skills, Lancer Alter's first skill is Mana Burst rank A+, which will increase her Buster card effectiveness for one turn between 35 to 55% depending on level. Her second skill is Protection from the End of the World, which will increase her crit star gather rate between 500 and 1000%, as well as increase crit strength between 30 and 50%, and generate between 5 to 10 crit stars, all depending on level. And finally, her last skill is Charisma rank E, which will increase the attack of all allies between 6 to 12% depending on level. Looking at her passives, she has Magic Resistance rank B, which increases debuff resist by 17.5%, and Riding rank A, which increases her quick card effectiveness by 10%. Now onto her deck and Noble Phantasm. She has a light Buster deck with Quick, Arts, Buster, and a Buster Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Rongo Mayanad, which deals heavy damage to all enemies that ignores defense with between a 300 and 500% damage modifier. It also has a 60% chance to inflict Noble Phantasm Seal for one turn, and it inflicts Curse for 5 turns between 500 and 1500 depending on overcharge. It can be further strengthened through an interlude, which will up the damage modifier to between 400 to 600% depending on level, and will inflict Curse between 1000 to 3000 depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, we can see that her Quick card hits twice, her Arts card hits 3 times, her Buster hits once, her Extra attack hits 4 times, and she has a Noble Phantasm gain of 0.74%, as well as a star rate of 11.8%. And what that means is she does have low Noble Phantasm gain just due to having only one Arts card and a bad Noble Phantasm gain rate, and she has average star generation thanks to having 2 quick cards and her riding passive. Let me start off by just saying Lancer Alter is a story lock servant, so you can't roll her until you clear London, or unless she's on raid up. And I feel like I review a different Saber Alter every month, but you'll be glad to know that Lancer Alter is significantly different from her 4-star Saber and Rider counterparts, in a very subtle and amazing way. First off, just looking at the attack stat, you'll notice that Lancer Alter has incredibly high attack. In fact, if you factor in the 1.05 damage modifier that Lancers have, she actually has higher attack than Saber Alter. And just like Saber Alter, if you grail her to 90, her attack will shoot up dramatically to the point where it's even higher than most other 5-star Lancers at 90. And at first glance, her skills also seem similar to Saber Alter's, but aside from Charisma, Lancer Alter's skills are comparatively better versions of Saber Alter's. Lancer Alter's Mana Burst, for example, actually gives her a 55% Buster buff, making it stronger than Saber Alter's and Arturia's, as well as most other Mana Burst skills in the game. Her second skill, Protection from the End of the World, is also a much upgraded version of Intuition, and one of the best crit skills in the game as it does everything you need. It provides stars, raises your star weight to ensure that you absorb those stars, and then it gives you a big boost to your crit damage all in one skill. And this is just effectively a skill that will let you crit on demand. As amazing as her second skill is though, I still recommend maxing Mana Burst first, just because her Busters and Noble Phantasm are still the primary source of her damage. Then max Protection from the End of the World, followed by Charisma. Lancer Alter's Noble Phantasm is another strength of hers. While it isn't the same as Excalibur Morgan, it's arguably just as good, if not better in some situations. The damage modifier isn't as high, even post-interlude, but it still does some incredible damage for an AoE and has a very decent chance to Noble Phantasm Seal an enemy, which can save you from time to time, but don't rely on it too much. And of course, having a strong AoE makes her a great farming servant, but that's really underestimating her power. This Noble Phantasm is definitely meant to be used on tough bosses, and it's very effective at that. Lancer Alter is pretty much the Lancer version of Saber Alter, But even more than that, she's an improved Saber Alter with more damage and better skills. That isn't to say she's invulnerable though. She does suffer from one common issue with Saber Alter, in that her charisma is underwhelming and has bad scaling. Her protection from the end of the world skill also only produces 10 stars at max rank, which is not enough to guarantee a crit on its own 100% of the time, but when you factor in that other people are producing crit stars on your team, it should be more than enough. And of course she doesn't have any survival skills whatsoever, so it can be a challenge keeping her alive if she becomes targeted. Still though, the amount of versatility and power that her second skill brings to the table is invaluable. It really does open a whole new dimension to her gameplay by making her a very potent buster crit servant, and in the right team she can melt through anything. Lancer Alter thrives on any team that can support her with buffs, so Waver, Hans, David, Liz, Shakespeare, and Caesar fill this role pretty nicely, but she also lacks survivability and debuff removal, so pairing her with Mosh, Media Lily, Joan, or Martha is also a good option. And finally, thanks to her second skill, she also makes for a very strong crit Lancer. You'll want to take advantage of this with a crit star generator like Gil, Atlanta, Hassan, Ogita, Jack, or even post-strengthening quest Carmilla. And again, if you are using her as a crit Lancer, Hans and Waver are good here too because they can buff her crit damage. And when it comes to craft essences, her Bond craft essence is Black Helmet. It increases the Noble Phantasm gain of all allies by 15%. And this isn't a very good craft essence on her. I would never recommend using it since you're way better off just focusing on increasing your Noble Phantasm damage and crit damage instead. As such, your best options are Heaven's Feel, Halloween Princess, and Limited Zero for increasing your Noble Phantasm damage. And if you're going for crits, use either Victor of the Moon or Gudao, since both can increase your Noble Phantasm damage and your crit damage. Or you can go with Knight's Dignity if you don't mind trading some survivability for a ton of crit damage, or you just like role-playing since it is a very fitting craft essence for her, thematically speaking. And if you don't want to make that trade-off because you feel too vulnerable, you can just stick her with Gem Magecraft instead, and of course your trusty Kaleidoscope for farming. As you can see, she's very versatile. There are a ton of craft essence options that work with her, so I encourage experimenting. And my overall opinion of Lancer Alter is that she's pretty OP. If you guys remember way back in my Saber Alter spotlight, I said if Saber Alter had better skills, she could compete with Herc for most broken 4-star, and Lancer Alter is Saber Alter with a different class, even more attack thanks to the modifier, and most importantly, better skills. She's a strict upgrade to Saber Alter in my opinion, who herself is already a top tier 4-star, and she even outscales most 5-star Lancers in damage if you grail her. Despite this, she does still have an issue with survivability, and her charisma is very lackluster. If you added an Evade or Guts to her charisma, that would absolutely push her over the edge to being game-breaking tier. But as she is now, she gets an A+ from me. Definitely a top tier 4-star servant and one of the best Lancers in the game regardless of rarity. That crit skill just adds so much value to her kit, and you'll definitely be impressed with the amount of damage that she can output. And if you need a Lancer, I do recommend going for her. You won't be disappointed, and you'll likely be set with Lancers for life. And those are my thoughts on Lancer Alter. I know a couple of people are looking forward to her, so good luck with your rolls, and let me know what you think in the comments. Also, please do check out my Nikola Tesla spotlight, also up on the channel, linked in the description. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. And if you haven't already, please join our party over at Discord and follow us on Twitter, both linked in the description. And with that, I will see you all in the next spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.